Chapter 2. Syrena. Fear. Nothing scared me before in my life ever. I've always been unshakable, born into the darkness and raised within its cold embrace. I learned earlier that fear was one of the things that were unobtainable to the people living in this realm. Vasilio. My kingdom was a place where the shadows ruled, where the sun shined through the thick, suffocating clouds. This is what was comforting to me, but it was never enough. I'd been told stories about the outside world, about a world containing the energy source of light, but those tales had always been a myth, lies, and foolishness. The people of Vasilio lived in the shadows for a reason. Living in the light seemed like a way to invite disaster. The darkness. I understood it, but the light terrified me in a way I never thought was possible. I had known the darkness, has been raised in it, so I understand everything I'm in. It was the air I breathed, the world I lived in. Vasilio was a place where the shadows ruled, where the sun had long been forgotten, hidden behind a thick veil of clouds that never lifted. Behind those clouds, in the legends, resided a kingdom formed from the dead. There was no dawn here, and never bright mornings. The sky was a constant dusk, like a never-ending twilight, where the stars and moons only peeked out every night. The knowledge of the Light Kingdom was no more than a myth, a legend passed down through generations but never truly believed. In Vasilio, we had our own stories, our own history, but the idea of a kingdom of light beyond the suffocating clouds of ours seemed so outlandish that it was diminished as nonsense. People spoke of it in hushed tones, as if considering it might bring the wrath of shadows down on them. Every corner of Vasilio, there were reminders of the darkness. Where you are is where you've been raised in. The old tales passed down from ancients spoke of time when the world had always not been like the way it is currently in Vasilio. They said the land was once bathed in the golden glow of a mighty sun, where the skies were clear and the earth was fertile with life. But those times were long forgotten and replaced by darkness when the sun disappeared and was swallowed by an unknown force, hidden beyond the clouds, and now what consumed the sky. The Light Kingdom, they said, was a realm of pure energy, of warmth and resilience. A place where the sun itself resided, its power so potent that it could heal, illuminate all that stood within it. It was a paradise, they claimed, a place untouched by the darkness that had overtaken our world. But no one had ever seen it. No one had ever confirmed its existence. It was simply a story, a legend too fantastical to believe. The stories I grew up in told of travelers who ventured beyond Vasilio, seeking the kingdom of light, but none of them ever returned. They were swallowed by the darkness, lost to fogs and clouds, their fates sealed as they ventured into the unknown. The elders often whispered that these travelers had been foolish, that they had dared to challenge the natural order to leave behind the protection of the shadows, and so they perished. I had always trusted in these stories, as we all did. The truth, as far as I was concerned, was clear. The world beyond a myth, a place of fantasy for those who could not accept the reality of Vasilio. The kingdom of light didn't exist, not really. It was simply a construct created by those who longed for something they could never have. I'd been taught that the light was a lure, a distraction, a force that, even if it existed, it would be dangerous. It could only invite ruin, for no one could live without the safety of shadows. Living in Vasilio was like a kingdom of whispers, a land where coldness clung to the air like a blanket of fog. I had grown up alone, surrounded by creatures and other beings similar to me, yet never truly alike. Loneliness wasn't something we spoke about in Vasilio, because after all, we were taught of the things of the shadows did not need company, and so we were born with our own source of power, coming from its own shadows. Wandering around Vasilio would be hard if you didn't know your way around. Everything always comes unexpectedly, and you never know what's to come. Hearing the conversations spoken, you could tell everything you needed to know about the person. People spoke in hushed tones to indicate that they are in a constant state of fear and not knowing what's to come, as if they never got over the overwhelming pressure that they were meant to feel when they were brought to Vasilio. On the other hand, people that used their immense power to speak were the people that knew they were untouchable. These were the ones who had embraced the darkness, who no longer flinched at the weight of shadows pressing on them. They did not speak with lingering whispers, like the fearful mass that spoke with uncertainty of those who had long since accepted that fear was a weapon, not a weakness. School life isn't the most pleasant thing. We aren't taught to learn and thrive, but more so how our life would be without survival skills. I figured that the moment I stepped through the academy doors for the first time, being in school was the most I've been around people. Outside these walls was a totally different environment, but somehow still the same essence of being in a cage. The halls were vast and cold, carved from the same black stone as the entire Basilio floors, torch-lined walls, their airy blue casting flames on the jagged shadows that stretched like moving living things that would follow us around. There was no warmth, no comfort, only the weight of silence, which would be broken by the sounds of footsteps and hushed voices. Throughout the years I spent here, I learned how to observe. The weak moved cautiously, never drawing attention to themselves. They spoke in murmurs, never daring to let their voices rise too high. The powerful walked differently. They didn't whisper, but instead spoke with confidence that cut through the silence like a blade. They carried themselves with certainty, with presence. They never hesitated, never second-guessed their place. I watched them all. The ones who ruled were the ones who weren't coward. The ones who played the game well, through the middle, never were too weak and never were crushed, never too strong to be challenged either. I was yet deciding on where I belonged between these. But one thing certain I knew was I wasn't one of these silent ones. I never questioned my place in Basilio until the others started to. At first, it was subtle. The way conversations would fall off when I entered a room, people's eyes lingered just a little too long and filled with something I couldn't quite place. Curiosity, caution, fear. The professors were first to notice. They never said anything outright, but I could feel it. Their gazes were heavier when they looked at me, as if they saw something beneath my skin that I couldn't even discover yet myself. When we practiced channeling shadows, my control came too easily. I didn't struggle like the others. I didn't flinch when the rest of the shadows wrapped around my fingers, responding to my thoughts without resistance. All around, I'd hear whispers. She didn't even try. The shadows listened to her. How's Syrena doing this? She was born for this. The shadows took notice, but they didn't welcome me. The power wasn't given freely in Basilio, and it was either taken or feared. The moment they sensed mine, they saw me as a threat. I just knew it. Some tested me, some pushed me to remind me that I hadn't earned my place yet. But every time there was a sense of threat I felt, the darkness would answer me first. Shifted, bending and obeying with my control. The professors were the first ones that told us about the Light Kingdom. It was always spoken of like a cautionary tale, a legend meant to remind us why we belonged in the shadows. They never outright dismissed its existence, but the way they spoke of it in a resentful manner made it clear that the Light Kingdom was not something to be admired. They warned us of those who had gone seeking it, those foolish enough to believe in something beyond Basilio's darknesses. None of them ever returned. The light is not salvation. One professor told us it is an illusion, a force that blinds, destroys, and those who do not belong in it. I had never questioned those words before. The stories had always been just stories. But now, I stood in a place where power was everything and the shadows bent to my will. I couldn't help but wonder, why are they so afraid of something they claimed wasn't real?